You know, a dream is like a river, ever changing as it flows. And a dreamer's just a vessel that must follow where it goes, trying to learn from what's behind and never knowing what's in store makes each day a constant battle or just to stay between the shore. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Maxwell Ivey, known around the world as the blind blogger, and this is the What's Your Excuse show, where we're going to challenge those excuses that are holding you back by bringing you interviews with people who have overcome adversity or difficult life circumstances, people who have struck out on their own and started unusual businesses, experts who have life-tested advice that they can offer, and people who I just happen to find interesting, motivating, or just somebody I would like to find out more about and have a conversation with, which was one of the great things about having a show. And you can find me at theblindblogger.net. I do want to invite you to visit my sponsors, createmyvoice.com, Chip and Pam Edwards. They're responsible for getting my blog and my podcast where you can find them on Alexa and Google. So you can say, Alexa, play Create My Voice, or Alexa, play The Blind Blogger, or Alexa, play the What's Your Excuse show on TuneIn. And the same with Google. You can go Google Talk to Create My Voice, Google Talk to The Blind Blogger, or Google Talk to the What's Your Excuse show. And I'm hoping I'm getting that right. And Chip says the most important thing now is invocations, or the words I just used to tell you how to find me. Those are like your brand, your name, your address, just like your website or your blog address would be. And eventually those are all going to be claimed, or most of them, or especially the good ones. And I guarantee the one you really wanted will probably be taken if you don't get after it. So talk to Chip about creating a brand. And then Alex at NitoShop.com. He's responsible for getting my logos out there on shirts and other merchandise. And if you have a logo and you're looking to get your stuff out there, either for promotional purposes or maybe to make a few extra dollars, go check him out at NitoShop.com. So got all that done. Now, today I have a great friend of mine on the podcast. His name is Alex Sanfilippo. Thank goodness he's got a short first name, because I'd hate to have to call him Mr. Sanfilippo. I met him first at Podfest last March. We shared the stage at the Pizza Cuccia. I enjoyed his talk. He enjoyed mine, came up afterwards and introduced himself, and we've really been great friends since. He has, in my opinion, he's been a lifelong entrepreneur. He started his first business activity selling golf balls at the age of 12. He's been in real estate. He started a tech company and sold it. He's been in aerospace in the corporate world for the last 10 years or so, but at the same time, he's been working as a business coach and a public speaker and trying to help as many people as he can who aspire to own and operate and grow a business. His latest project is the Creating a Brand for a better way of talking about it. He has the community where he's building to be a place where people like you and me can come and get ideas, answers, support each other. And he's also got a great podcast that I was fortunate enough to be a guest on. So you can find him at creatingabrand.com. Alex, thank you for coming on the show, and welcome.
Max, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for that great intro. That was, I really appreciate it. I feel like I owe you something from that already.
Well, we take cash, credit. We don't take bad checks anymore, but we will take cash or credit.
All right, got it.
But yeah, you have become part of my family, man. So it's been a long time getting you on the show. And I guess the first question I would personally like to know the answer to, and that's where I'm trying to start nowadays, is were you always an entrepreneur? Were you the kind of person who had a lemonade stand at 5 before you did the golf balls at 12? Or was your family business people? Where does this all come from?
Yeah, for sure. First off, before I even start that, I got to say, I've been anticipating being on this show like all week, been thinking about it. I'm so excited to finally be here. So I am pumped to get into this conversation here.
Well, I will do my best to hold up my end.
So my background, you know what's funny? I didn't know I was an entrepreneur, even all through high school, through doing some schooling after that. Even I would have never called myself an entrepreneur. That is more recent for me. However, I definitely was one and just didn't realize. My family comes from a background of entrepreneurs. I would definitely say that my father started a business a few years before I was born, that being very successful. He sold it many years after that, also in the aerospace industry. I got in because of my last name. It helped me a lot when I was going interview. People were like, "Oh, wait a second, you related to Andy Sanfilippo?" So I was able to get my foot in the door at a very early age with that. However, so yeah, I come with a background of entrepreneurship, and yes, before I sold golf balls, I sold lemonade, but I only did that maybe twice. And then I had this realization. I'm like, there's like 10 other kids in the neighborhood selling lemonade. I did the math, like the profit margin we were making. I'm like, we're selling it for a quarter each. We're making this much. I'm like, this isn't worth our time. And then that's when the golf ball idea came into play. But we also sold lemonade on the side of our golf balls. So,
I think that's an important thing that most people get caught up in the labels. And I've been having a lot of conversations with other people and myself lately about words that we call ourselves or that we're afraid to call ourselves. Because I was talking to a woman yesterday who's into fashion, but she wasn't willing to call herself a fashion influencer. And I talked to the two ladies from 10K Dollar Day last week. They weren't ready to call themselves a franchise yet, so I think it's interesting that you mentioned that you were an entrepreneur, but you just didn't think of yourself in those terms until very recently.
yeah, I'd say it's been over the last probably 6, maybe 7 years. And, at that point I was in my mid to late 20s. And when I started realizing that, like, okay, I am this thing they're talking about, an entrepreneur. Because, when you look at the definition, I'm like, hold on a second, that's what I've been doing my whole life, but I just never really thought of it that way.
Yeah. And do you think that when you do things without thinking about what you're going to call it, does that make it less scary?
I think it can, but at the same time, a little bit less intentional. So for me, now looking at my life, I think that if I would have told people in my early 20s, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I know where I'm going, I know my direction, it probably would have accelerated my direction a lot quicker and kind of honing in on where I wanted to go. We got to call it what it is, right? I mean, and sometimes it's great to call it into existence. So you can say, you know what, I do have a successful brand. I am a successful entrepreneur. But if you're just saying, no, I'm not really that, I'm not really that, it almost makes it sound like you're not serious. And that's not necessarily for me. I didn't have that idea of like, oh, I'm not serious. I just didn't think of it. But I think now if I were to go back, I'd be far more intentional and saying, you know what, I am an entrepreneur. I am going to succeed on this mission that I'm on. I'm going to help a lot of people in the process.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that we have to be more willing to call ourselves what we are, even if we're not 100% sure at the time, because it will make us more intentional and more likely to become that thing that we're talking about or working towards, even if we aren't using the word.
Absolutely. And, I know this is probably not our main topic today, but it kind of comes down to.
We do tangents big time here on What's Your Excuse, so go for it.
That's good. Thinking about that same thing, it comes down to identity at some point, which in my mind is the most important thing that you can really develop in your life is your identity and discovering who you are. If you're afraid to call yourself what you are, where you are today, you might be lacking a little bit of identity. And sometimes we can call ourselves something that's so far in advance that, again, we're not being true to ourselves. What's important for you to do is realize who you are right now and where you're going. Identity and purpose flow from that. That's really a deep conversation there. But Max, I'll let you take over from here.
Well, I've openly admitted to this in the past that when I do these interviews, more often than not, I'm doing them for my benefit, or if not intentionally, I will have aha moments. But I'm sitting there thinking, based on what you just said, I haven't been very intentional in my life, even over the last 10 or 12 years. It's like at some level, I may still be searching for what that thing is that I'm going to end up being, or just maybe a little bit of fear left in there that I'm maybe afraid to come out and say that I'm an influencer, or to say that I am an inspiration or motivational. The things that you and other people say about me all the time, I'd say maybe 3/4 of the time I could say them, but probably about the other 25% of the time, I wonder if they're true. So, it may be some deep stuff, but it's got me thinking, and I have to believe maybe it's getting some of the people who will listen to this thinking.
Yeah, one thing that's really good for discovering this, because a lot of people, they just kind of wake up and they don't understand really who they are. Their identity is kind of lost. And I think we lose it to this idea of the American dream, right? That can actually be a bit of a bit of a trap, if you will, because we kind of fit into a mold that says this is how you should be. You know, you need to grow up, go through school, you need to get a house, you need to get a car, you need to get a dog, you know, all these things that we're told this is what you do in your life. And I always say this, people will take you all the way to your grave. They'll ask what's next until you die, you know, like, and it's really sad. But the truth is, like, if you're really serious about living a life that you want to live, then you have to be willing to sit back and say, what am I supposed to do with my time? And maybe it doesn't fit the normal mold, and that's okay. And calling yourself what you are is so important no matter what other people are going to think. And man, for me, yeah, a little bit of fear can come in there, because you don't want to sound like like somebody who's, you know, being cocky or like a guru or something like that. I get some people kind of get nervous about that. But the truth is, you've got to be real with yourself, with who you are. And then also, if you're like, I don't know any of those things, the best thing you can do, the first course of action, ask the people that are closest to you what they think you're great at, because they'll tell you honestly.
Okay, well, the people who I'm closest to, they disagree with me. They think I am all those things that I wonder about, so I'm good.
There you go. Exactly. No, but the truth is, if people can really do that, if you're saying, man, I don't really know what I'm, you know, my identity or my purpose or anything like that, but if you really ask those people who are close to you and really mean it and say, can you really give me some things that you think I'm great at? Write them down and pursue them and see if, you know what, this person's right. This is what I'm great at. The truth is, the reason I discovered that I was actually entrepreneurial minded and that I made that discovery is because somebody told me I was really close to. Somebody told me, man, Alex, you're like one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met. First time I ever heard that in my life. I'm like, wait a second. Am I really? You know, and it was that discovery, that moment, it was through someone else's words. Because sometimes we're so close to ourselves, we can't even tell who we are. But somebody else can see you and look at those strengths and say, hey, I know who you are. I know where you're going and what you're capable of.
Now, see, guys and men and women out there, listen to what he's saying, because y'all, for any of you that have been following my journey, you know that it took people like Adrian Smith and Lorraine Reguly and Robin Hallett to say, you know, Max, there's more to you than a carnival broker. There's more to you than somebody that sells rides. And here's Alex, a guy who trust me, compared to where I'm at, this guy is killing it. And he is telling us that he didn't believe he was an entrepreneur until somebody else that he trusted showed that to him. So if you have a circle and you're not listening to them, that's on you. If you don't have a circle, go out and start finding one. Try to find at least one person, but after you listen to this, try to find at least one person that you can go to and go, who am I? And be relatively certain they're going to tell you the truth and tell you exactly who you are.
Absolutely. I think that one thing that I want to add to this is that here's the deal. You're very similar to the 5 closest people you hang out with. So who you spend your time with is who you're going to end up being like over time. Really think about that. Who's your tribe? Who's like your inner circle as people you spend your time with? If there are people that are bringing you down or the wrong direction, it's time to move on from that. You need to really figure out, okay, this is who I want to become. I want to be more like this. You need to get yourself around people like that. And I'm not saying like, you know, dump all your friends because you want to be more successful. So you want to find a bunch of rich people to hang around. You know, that's not how it works. It's more at a character level is what you want to look at.
And if not at a character level, at least at an effort or an integrity level. People who
absolutely
also have goals and are taking steps towards achieving those goals are the types of people you want to be around.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So, like I said, I told you that sometimes the answer I get is better than the question I was going to ask. So we're already ahead of the game. So yeah. So you recently, in the last 5-6 years, realized you're an entrepreneur, and then you started. By this time, you were probably working in aerospace back in corporate. So, what made you decide to start doing the coaching, and what would you say is your style as far as coaching business people?
Yeah, I developed this style through aerospace. I am so thankful for what corporate America has helped me with, because I think a lot of people, entrepreneurs especially, we don't want to work a 9-to-5 job. But the truth is, every 9-to-5 job that you can get anywhere at one point was a startup. At one point, that was a side hustle. That was something that became a full-time thing. It's just one that has arrived. So the business I was in was really big on structures, on creating systems. And that's what my job ultimately ended up being. It was that, you know what, Alex, you are the systems guy, you're the strategy guy. You can build something that works and that people can follow. So I was responsible for that, for building and designing the ideas that we'd implement. So basically, any system or structure you see within that aerospace organization where we're manufacturing parts going on aircraft, which is extremely regulated, I was creating the process for it happening. So because of that, an organic flow was for me to start helping other people do that. So business coaching started off with me helping people strategize, thinking of a bigger picture, and kind of sit back and say, okay, what is it that we need to do? And then to systemize that, because the truth is, if you have a great idea, but no system in place to actually execute it, it's not very good, right? You've got to have a system there.
Well, I tend to struggle against systems, but I'm implementing them slowly over time. I'm getting there, but I agree that they're valuable. I just sometimes have problems with the learning curve that's involved in creating the system the first time.
Yeah, and you see, that's kind of where I come into play, because it's a struggle for a lot of people. I'm one of the few people that it comes very natural to. The first thing I try to do when I develop something is create a system around it. It's the opposite of what 99% of people do, I would say. So like what you just said there, I mean, you have so many skills and talents, and when somebody comes alongside you, which you and I have gotten the chance to work together a little bit, I can help out a lot. Now, if you ask me to come up with the creative idea of how to how to make something like really a fun experience, something beautiful, that's what I'm going to sub out. I'm going to be like, hey, Max, can you help me with this? Because I'm going to give someone a box when they ask for something fun,
Really? I'm surprised because you strike me as somebody who would do fun well. So
I like to have fun. I leave other people
creating
designing
fun.
it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you start, and when you started this coaching, did you start right away offering yourself for a fee, or did you start with people you knew, or how did you get started?
Yeah, at first I was just helping out to get a little bit of experience, understand how it worked. I was just kind of helping out people that I had known that were more at a local level. And then this is around the time I started speaking as well. So what I was offering was to coach. So that's when I started charging. I started off relatively inexpensive and then worked my way up, which we can get into that a little bit more if we want to. But yeah, so at first it started off really free for a few people, and then I moved into like a low rate, and then just kind of worked my way into it from there.
Yeah, same with me with the online media work. Started with free with some beta clients, and then small fee, and then now a little more money. And I think it's good for people to hear that from you, because at this point you are there are going to be some people who are going to think, well, Alex sounds great, but I doubt I can afford to work with him, kind of a situation. So I think it's good though that people realize that very few of us start out at $100 an hour or $500 an hour, or $1,000 an hour, whatever it is, So you started with free and then some local clients. And how long do you think it took before you were starting to offer your services over the internet to people all over the world?
It wasn't very long, and most of it came through speaking. So speaking worked really well. I didn't do any advertising, and I wasn't too big with like pushing it online or anything like that. I was getting enough from actually speaking at conferences, the time that I had available for it. So I enjoyed that side. It came very organic. Like I got to meet my client before I actually was charging anything. And plus I also got to add the value. So for me, speaking first and then getting to have a conversation saying, hey, let's do a follow-up. And they were really interested. It kind of already gave me that level of trust, I guess I should say, with those individuals. They already said, you know what, Alex is somebody that I know I want to work with. He's already added the value. I've met him. And from there, it just kind of happened very organically.
Right. And you keep bringing these last few questions, you're bringing it back to your speaking. So what are some things that you can tell my listeners about public speaking, as far as if you're wanting to use that either to sell services or if you're wanting to do that as a paid speaker? What were some of the things you've learned in the first few years that you were doing that?
Yeah. The more you pitch yourself, the more speaking engagements you'll get. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I do recommend, aiming for the top, go for the big ones as soon as you can.
Yeah.
But also be willing to start off local. My first speaking gig was at a local meetup group. And honestly, still to this day, I will go back once a year and speak at that group. It's completely free. I'll never charge for it. And they're always like, wow, Alex, you really want to come back to this group of 30 people? I'm like, yes, it's where I got my start. I want to make sure I'm adding value continuous adding value. And here's the thing. So step one, pitch yourself as much as possible. Make sure your pitch is very precise. So you don't want to be, I'm good at all these things. You want to solve one problem, basically. You need to find what that conference is looking for and then solve that one issue and package it really well. and then just send it out to as many people as you can. Here's the deal. You don't have to use one speech one time. For a long time, I was in the WordCamp circuit, so WordPress conferences, and I
Right.
came up with 6 talks a year, and I'd pitch it to 30 different WordCamps. And guess what? A handful of them were interested. And I was doing similar talks every time. So the speech I'd give was almost the same thing. I'd tweak it a little bit, but it's not the same audience. So it's adding value to multiple people, and it's something I'm getting better and better at.
Right. And with the WordCamp, even among WordPress users, you could give the exact same talk to a committee looking for the exact same talk and have a totally different response because their audiences vary from city to city across the country.
Very true. Yes.
And the other thing I think that kind of gets in the way of some people is they get to that box that says, "Have you ever given this talk before?" And they have to click yes. Well, I'm of the opinion you click no because you've really never given that exact talk before. That's my personal opinion. If any of the speaking organizers are listening, I'm sorry, but okay.
Either way works for me. I don't think it makes, I don't know necessarily what people are looking for. To me, if I were organizing an event and you said you had given a talk before, it might almost be more valuable because I'd say, okay, he's probably, Maxwell's probably well-versed in it. But if you say no, then I guess it's original content. I can see either side, but regardless, I don't think that's necessarily something that people are looking at too much. What they're looking at is what value is this person going to bring to the audience we're going to have at this conference.
Yeah, and I'm glad you answered the question the way you did because that is a dilemma that you have because you're trying to figure out which answer do they want me to give.
Right.
Are they seeking unique content or are they seeking an experienced speaker? And with WordCamp, since they encourage first-time speakers, you really just don't know. Now, and you said make it a really precise pitch to the conference as far as what you believe that they're wanting.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Like, get the title right, spend some time on it. Don't just put it together and, don't say like a talk about, if we're going to go with the WordCamp ones, I'd always talk about blogging. So you don't want to say like a talk about blogging. I'd always one I did last year that worked really well was how to win as a blogger and reach your goals in 2019. And they ate it up. I mean, they probably didn't even read the rest of it. They're just like, yeah. One of them literally said with a title like that, yes, we 100% want you. That was their response. I don't even think they knew what it was about, but the title was right. So it's really, again, it's all about for them to be able to see the value. But then here's the deal. Let's say you land the speaking gig. It is all about adding value. Last time I went to, again, sticking with the WordCamp, I speak outside of WordCamps as well, but last time I went to one, I didn't even mention what I do in it. I mentioned my name at the beginning. I didn't mention anything else. All I did was add as much value as I could for 45 minutes. I started my talk off with saying that. I said, my goal in this talk is to add as much valuable information for you as I possibly can. And not to be conceited at all, but they rate that it was a bigger WordCamp and they rate all the speakers. And I got more ratings than anybody else, including Keynote. And I had a line of people waiting to talk to me. They're like, what do you do? Like, how can I work with you? That type of thing. So it was a really cool experience, but all I did was focus on adding the value to people. And that's always what our mind's got to be. It can't be, I can't wait to push this product. I can't wait to talk about my new service. It's got to be, hey, how can I benefit other people today?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more about that. And now you've got me wondering, I'm gonna have to go back and look at my last WordCamp talk because I was so sick after it was over with. I didn't even bother to go check and see if they rated my talk or not. I was just happy to get my butt back on the train and be headed back home to Houston. So, but another thing I noticed about WordCamp, and I think this is probably pretty common with the bigger conferences, is they'll have a green room. They'll have an area for the other speakers to interact, and that could be a great place to not only to network, not only to find out about other conferences, but just to make those personal connections and see if they don't possibly lead to opportunities to help each other down the road.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, that's one of my biggest things that I do at conferences. I love speaking at them. I love networking, but nothing beats the speaker lounge if they have one. That's the first place I want to go. I want to meet as many people as I possibly can. That networking is so valuable. I mean, a handful of my guests on my podcast have come from that type of introduction I've had, being like, oh, you're a speaker too, let's talk. Because you automatically have like a connection that you're not going to have with just anybody else at the conference. It's that, hey, we're both speakers, we're both here to add value. And that's usually, you'll find that can be your tribe pretty often if that's you're in the speaking world. But yeah, I spend a lot of time at all conferences networking as much as I possibly can.
All right. And another thing, I think me and you both, well, I learned it. You were probably just reminded of it. Who knows? You may have known it going in. Is when we pitch an event, there's nothing wrong with the event organizer going, you sound like you'd be a great speaker, but we don't have a big stage ready for you yet, but we do have a smaller stage ready for you. And would you like to give a talk? And, of course, that's how I met you, was at the Pizza Cucha thing last year, where I wanted to do a breakout session. And they were like, no, we think you need to do the Pizza Cucha. So, talk about that as far as being willing to maybe accept less than what you were hoping for in some situations.
Never despise humble beginnings. It's something that I have truly learned. A humble beginning is the most beautiful thing. I'm, me, Max, I'm a man of faith. So I read a proverb every day from the scriptures. And one of them talks about how it says the Lord admires and appreciates the small, humble beginnings. And I think for us, we have to be willing to have that humble beginning. And here's the deal. Sometimes I'll pitch these conferences, and at the level I'm at now, I can sometimes get keynotes. I can usually get a main stage, but sometimes it doesn't happen. At the end of the day, we have to remember that it's not about that. If we make it about us just getting to the top as fast as we can, I think that we just have the wrong heart in it. At the end of the day, if somebody gives me a small stage or a table full of people, I'm going to be just as happy, because I think the biggest thing you have to remind yourself when you're talking, when you're podcasting, anything you're doing, you have to remember, if you can do for one person what you wish you can do for all, then it's a win. So for me, if I help one person today, then it is a win for me. I don't need to talk to the masses. I don't need all that. I just need to say, you know what, I did everything I could for one person today. And honestly, no one can ever expect anything more of you. And if you go into everything with that mindset, man, I find it's just so much more fulfilling no matter what you do.
That's got me rethinking some of this. One of my favorite talks was for a group of 13 people. And yet when I send out pitches where they ask for a video, I don't always think to put that one in first. So, that's something I'm going to have to definitely start sharing more, because I enjoyed it and they enjoyed it. A lot of value was offered. So, and you mentioned the Bible, being somebody who's of faith. I'm also a person of faith, and I like to think about the expression concerning how if we can't be trusted with the little, we can't be trusted with the great. So it's very good to hear, but I agree with you. A lot of people are so focused on that end goal of either speaking on stages where they can get hired for large amounts of money, or being paid the speaker's fees, and also having the accommodations that go with the fees, and they really forget about the experience along the way and adding value. So.
Yeah, we live in a numbers-driven culture. I mean, if you think about social media, it's kind of further developed that within our minds. How many likes does this person get? How many follows do they have? I think the first thing a lot of speakers do in the room subconsciously is they count the room. They're like, okay, there's probably about 200 people in here. Like I think it can be a negative. I mean, at the end of the day, that was never that shouldn't show anything about somebody's worth or the value that they have. Like at the end of the day, again, like I keep on repeating this, but it's all about adding value to that one person. And if we look too much at the numbers, man, it's a bad idea to really get into that. I mean, think about it, man. If you could have an audience of 1 million people, and I'm going to give an example real quick. There was this person on Instagram, as I was just talking about it. She's going to remain nameless. I don't know her personally, but she had over 1 million followers. She wasn't famous at all. She was just great at Instagram, and a lot of people were following her. It always kind of made her more and more prideful. When she finally released a product, she sold 17 of them.
We're talking about the lady who had over 1 million followers and only sold 17 shirts.
Yeah. Okay. So the story.
I know this. Yeah. People come up to me and they ask me about it because they know that I'm kind of in that business. So they're like, Max, have you heard about this story yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't. But so it gives them the opportunity to tell it to me again. But yes, it's crazy that she basically, as they say, bought into the headline and started seeing the number of people following her as a representation of her value online, and it turned out to be a little overinflated.
Yeah, and here's the deal: if only 17 people bought, you don't have like a super loyal audience at that point. But imagine if you just had 50 people following on there, and you post something saying, "Hey, I could really use help moving today," and all 50 people showed up. That to me is more successful than somebody with a million, numbers on there, if you will, that doesn't really have any influence with it. But again, if you had that small number, but every single one of them is willing to do something for you, man, that has so much more value, and that goes so much deeper.
That actually happened to me 1.5 years ago in New York when I was sick. I also ended up broke. and I appealed on to my community about getting some help. And one person provided me with a train ticket, and the other person provided me with a room to stay for the night, and even put some money on the room service account so I could eat that day. And that's the case. My network is not hundreds of thousands or millions, but when I really needed somebody to help, they were there. And so I definitely agree with your point and your take on it. Now you've been doing the speaking. What are the usual topics that you tend to be asked to speak on, or that you fit yourself to speak on, besides your WordCamp?
Yeah, it started off, that's where it started, was WordPress meetups, WordCamp, and things like that. And it was always about content creation. So I've always been gifted when it comes to creating content. SEO came very natural as well. So those type of things are where it began. In more recent years, it's moved into entrepreneurship, side hustles, and things like that. How to create companies is what I've been doing. And the most recent trend, I'd say, is more into the motivational side of things, which I'm really excited about, because I love inspiring and helping people in that way. So it's going to be more of, you'll see more of me doing things like high achievement, how to get the most out of your life and things like that, which I'm really excited to see it. My journey just continue to transition into that. But yeah, it all started from giving a little blogging talk to some really dorky SEO talks. Search engine optimization is what SEO stands for. And then into some more like side hustles, how to develop a business, the system side of things, culture side of things, and now into really adding some value at a personal level, saying this is how you achieve more with your life and how you live a life that you love.
Yeah, and this year, one of the events for WordCamp is going to be here in Houston. I think it's a 10th anniversary or 12th anniversary or something. When I was reading the press release for it, I realized that as a Houstonian, I should know this, that WordPress started in Houston, Texas. That the first build of that software was written here and then shipped off to somewhere else to be released.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
I did not know it either until I was reading the forum, so I could submit a pitch to it for this summer. So, and as Texans, we love bragging on stuff. So for me not to know something like that, that's a shock. I mean, and especially as much as I appreciate WordPress, because I used to have to do the HTML thing for my website. So I really should have known that. Okay, so it's nice to see your progression in the public speaking as well as in coaching. And it is a great reminder that none of this stuff usually comes overnight or without effort and struggle. So I'm just to remind y'all, I'm talking with Alex Sanfilippo. He's a lifelong entrepreneur, business coach, and now runs the Creating a Brand community and Creating a Brand podcast. And you can find him at creatingabrand.com. So let's talk a little bit about where the idea came from for the community and what you really hope for people to get out of the community.
This is my favorite topic, as you can imagine. So,
oh yeah.
You know what? So going back to the coaching thing, I have not been coaching the way that I used to. I'll do very little of it at this point. And the reason for that is I began growing coaching clientele. It's time for dollars. So an hour of my time for some of your dollars. That's basically the way it would work. So there was only so much time in a day. It was always one-on-one. As much as I enjoyed it, I realized, I actually can remember one day waking up after doing a couple coaching calls the night before and just kind of like staring out the window. I was like, it was a nice day. I was just staring out the window and my wife was like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? I'm like, I just don't feel like I'm reaching the people that I'm desiring to reach anymore. And she had me explain. And basically what I meant by that is I was having to charge a certain amount because that's just the way it works. Yeah. And I was helping businesses and people that were really established, and that's great and all. But at the end of the day, my heart's always longed more toward the people that are wanting to get started or that are just getting started or don't even know what their next step is. Yes. And that's always kind of what I've looked at. And I'm like, you know what, how do I get to that? Because that's what I want to do. And a lot of them don't have a budget for it, or maybe they can't see the value in it yet, which I understand. Like I didn't pay for coaching until much later in my career because I didn't see the value of it, but it's extremely valuable. However, if you're just getting started, you don't know. If you're just like, I just need a website, or I just need a logo, or I just need to know how to file for an LLC, like all these different things that people have in their minds. That's who I wanted to help, because I know that that's where I'm able to have the most value. So because of that, that's where the Creating a Brand community came into play. I decided to make a closed membership website. So it is not open to the public. It's a paid membership, but it's much less than what you would charge for me one-on-one. And my goal with it is, I've always said, is I give 110% to anybody who is a member of that community. And then we're all going to help each other, because you know how it goes when you charge, you kind of bring in your tribe, you get some like-minded people. And I'll tell you what, some people can add some serious value to the lives of other people when you get them around just that right tribe.
Yeah.
And with that said, like, you bring around that right tribe, and man, that's just what I love to do. So I kind of put the coaching thing aside, and now I'm just full-time focused in helping the community and just doing everything I can to add value there. So again, it's a closed community, but you know, you pay a membership subscription, and then you're part of it. And then you have unlimited access to me, to anything else we talk about, any of the online courses, any of the groups. And like I said, 100% access to all those things, meaning there's no upcharge. So for me, that's actually my only product with creating a brand. There is only one thing I offer. And people always ask me, like, well, what if you wanted to like add this or have like an upsell on this? I'm like, I don't want to do that. All I want to do is help people. And this is the audience that I know I'm supposed to be helping. So it's at the right dollar amount. It's helping the right people right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to help you out here a little bit. I've been a member since appearing on his podcast last year. And I will say that the amount he charges to be a member of a group that's this qualified and talented combined, other people would be charging you more money to start with, and then they would have upsells. Like I think about once a month he drops a new online course, and that online course doesn't cost me anything. If he's going to have a live event online, that's not going to cost me anything. And as I've mentioned on Twitter several times now, the quality of the people that I've met and the advice and suggestions I've already received have been more than worth what you're charging people to be there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Max. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. I definitely believe in showing gratitude and supporting people who are providing a good service, especially if I'm personally benefiting from it, which I am. So I really appreciate the community. And now it's got a different website. So how do people find the community, or can they find it straight from the Creating a Brand site?
Yeah, straight from Creating a Brand. Every link will take you there. Actually, on that website, though, there's also, because again, I'm a value adder, there's free courses on there that I don't even require your email address. I have 6 of them that are completely 100% free. You can just click on them by going to creatingabrand.com/courses. There's 6 of them right now. I think a couple of them are full, but the rest of them aren't. But it doesn't require a login or anything. You can just go take those. But all the other links on the website will take you to joining the community. And no matter how you join, if you join through a course, you're getting access to all of them. So you're paying for one, you're paying for them all, basically. If you join the community, you have access to everything. And that's, again, Max, as you know, like that's just the way that I like to do business. That's what I believe in. Some people think it's crazy, but you know what? I'm here to help. So
yeah. Well, you know, crazy is only crazy until it's proven to work. Then
that
it's
is
genius.
true. Yes,
then it's genius. Right. And I do love what you do. I mean, I can't remember the last time I signed up for a course, or excuse me, that I wanted to take a course that I wasn't required to sign up for it, whether I wanted to or not. And then have, you know, a month or 2 months or 3 months later, have to find that stupid unsubscribe button in their email list to get off the list that I signed up to for a course that maybe I took, maybe I didn't take, maybe I learned something, maybe I didn't. Because, you know, everybody knows once you get them subscribed, very few people unsubscribe. So but to have a situation where, you know, you don't even require an email address for people to take those courses, that's, you know, I know you said it's crazy, but like I say, it'll be, when it's proven to work, it'll be genius. Doing something that's unique, that's different when everybody else is doing, you know, can always have an impact. And I'm guessing the fact that you're still here, you're still showing up and you're still developing content for the Creating a Brand platform means that it is working.
Yeah, it's worked good for me, because here's the thing. Here's the way I'm going to describe it. Basically, we all talk about free giveaways. Every marketer or person will be like, have a free, you know, top of the funnel free giveaway. But I don't think we start it truly free, because asking for somebody's email address before you give them something isn't free. It's still going to cost them something. It's going to cost their email address and then a bunch of emails they don't want to get, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I found that it's like, hey, someone gave me this example, actually, I interviewed recently, John Mearman Scott. He does business mastery with Tony Robbins, and also is the author of The New Rules for Marketing and PR, which is like a legendary book. So he helped like write the book on marketing, right? Like the whole idea of it. And he talked about, he used this example of giving something away completely for free. He's like, you know, the way we're doing it right now is like going to a bar and, you know, meeting a girl, or a girl comes up to you, she wants to talk to you, and like you start having a conversation. But instead of just being like, yeah, here, let me buy you a drink, it says, hey, can I look at your bank account and then I'll buy you a drink. That's kind of like the step we take. We jump way too far ahead and we're like, okay, give me your email, give me something and then I'll give you something. But completely free is a different concept that many people have heard. And some marketing people are like, man, you can't be giving stuff away for free because no one's ever going to come back or sign up. But the truth is, if you add value to people's lives, they're going to come back. And for me, I want to show the way that I am within the creating a brand community outside of it as well. I want people to look at this as almost like a preview. Like the thing is, I'm an open book. I'm here to help. I don't mean to like devalue a product by giving something away for free, but I do want to add that initial value. And of course, at the bottom of the courses, I have something you can sign up for to continue to learn more, and that will bring you into the community. But I think having something completely for free is a big win, and very few brands are utilizing that right now. But the ones that are understanding it are really taking it very far.
Well, you make me feel a little encouraged because in 2014, when I released my first book, I included my email address with the book and told the people who read it that they should email me and report to me on their progress through the exercises in the book. And people called me crazy then. So I feel a little encouraged hearing you explain how this is not only working, but it's being proposed and advocated for by some of the biggest names in marketing these days. So that,
yeah, it's called being an innovator, Max. You're years ahead of all of us.
yeah, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. That's how
Right.
that's how I do everything. I don't know what I'm doing until I've done it, man. That's part of my brand and part of my failing. You know, I generally don't know what I've done until I'm halfway through it at least.
I love it. But here's the thing, that the key there is that you're actually doing, like you're doing something. I think a lot of people want to wait until they feel like they really know or mastered something. If the people that just jump out there and go for it, they're the people that make it happen. So Max, you are a go-getter. You're someone who's making it happen.
Well, I appreciate that. And you've mentioned the podcast a couple of times. Why don't you tell people more about what the podcast is and isn't and what they can expect from the people you have on the show?
Yeah, for sure. I love podcasting. So I launched this whole thing on July 2nd, 2019. I launched the community and the podcast at the same time. The podcast or the community was in beta for a while. Like we didn't mass announce it or anything like that, just to kind of get our feet wet with it, you know? But
Yeah.
the podcast we launched at that point, and man, it did really well. I'm so thankful for it. It hit top 20 business podcast. It hit top 100 business podcast, top 20 entrepreneurship podcast, and even hit the top charts for a little bit. Featured by Apple, crushed it. I was so excited about it. I will say we put the work in. We worked really hard on it. A lot of people were like, man, that was an overnight success. But here's the thing. I tell people, you didn't look at the year that I put in before I actually launched it. There was a behind the scenes that happened. It was actually about 8 months before I launched. I worked for 8 months and never had anything to show for it. But that was building the episodes, building the structure, all of that. So when we launched, it did really well. But the actual format of the show, I'll get into that. It's just interviews. So it is me talking to other people that are entrepreneurial minded or business minded of some sort, or even just self-development minded. And I'm just talking to people, having them just share their wisdom. And Max, kind of like you, I think we've talked about this before. I feel like it's free coaching for me. Like I'm not paying for it, but I'm learning so much from each of these guests that I have.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. It's free coaching. It's also free energy because you hang around these people, you know, you mentioned it earlier. Who do you hang around with? You know, you hang around these top business successes and experts, and you know you can't help but feel a little bit of their success, a little bit of their energy rub off on you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like today, perfect example. Earlier today, I interviewed JLD, Entrepreneur on Fire. He was my interview this afternoon. That guy has got so much energy, you know, like interviewing with him, like I get off, I'm like, man, I'm fired up, you know, like fired up, and then just tons of wisdom. It's you know, people pay to have a conversation with JLD. You are paying thousands of dollars to talk to him. So the fact that I got to do a podcast episode with him where I didn't pay thousands of dollars is a huge win. And then for my audiences as well, because everyone's going to get to hear this wisdom that he usually charges people thousands of dollars for. And that's kind of the way that I do this whole podcast. And again, I believe that ultimately each of us is the brand. So I say it's for entrepreneurs, but truthfully, it's for anybody who wants to take themselves further. So we do a lot of self-development. We have an episode on interdependence. Max, that's the one you and I did, which is one of my favorites. So we talk about the importance of interdependence in your life. We did one on sleep. We've done so many on that type of thing. And then we've gotten into some business stuff, like how to use video to grow your brand, how to use podcasting to grow your brand, all these different type of things. The whole idea is to help you go further, faster, while saving you time and money. That is our ultimate goal there.
Yeah. So a couple of things. You started your podcast on this July 2nd, I think you said. I
Correct.
relaunched my podcast on July 1st. you put 8 months of sweat and tears and thought into starting yours. I basically just started mine by the seat of my pants. Yours is in the top, got into the top 100 and got promoted by iTunes. Mine made it into the top 1,000 and hasn't been promoted by anybody. But both of us are making progress, having fun, and showing different levels of success based on the fact that we're both taking action, even if it's different types of action based on our different levels of ability and our different styles as far as how we approach problems.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I love that you beat me by one day. I think that's sweet. I didn't realize it was one day, but you know, we have a mutual friend, Chris Kremensos, and recently published a book called Start Ugly.
Okay.
And yeah, in his book, it's phenomenal. I've read it. I got the opportunity to interview him about it as well. And the whole concept is just get started, like stop, you know, just kind of beating around the bush, like actually just go do something. And, you know, it's however it fits your personality. Me being a planner, I knew that I set that launch date in January. I knew, hey, we're launching July 2nd. So I went for it. And that was my Start Ugly. I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to build it. For you, the way that your mind works, Max, is you just went for it, which I admire beyond belief to just do that. It takes a lot of courage and just being able to say, hey, I'm confident in what I'm going to be able to do because you're a guy who knows where you're going. But at the end of the day, it's for all of us, the people that sit around year after year that have run into it, all these conferences. I've seen some people for 2 and 3 years saying the same thing. Oh yeah, I'm about to finally launch. And for me, I'm like, would you just press that publish button or hit that live button and just do it?
Okay. For those of y'all who don't know, I've got to explain why I'm laughing. My first public talk with a microphone in my hand was called Just Press Send. And it was given to a group of people at a conference called DreamCon. And since then, I've given a talk called Just Press Publish, Don't Let Fear Keep You From Your Dreams. So he's like, just go ahead and press it already. I'm like, yeah. I guess I'm going to have to read Chris's book now because it does sound like we have a lot in common. And also, it sounds like I could probably get some ideas for motivating the new podcasters at PodFest this year, which I don't guess it would hurt us to mention. You don't happen to know the website for PodFest, do you?
I just think it's podfestmultimediaexpo.com.
Okay.
If you just Google PodFest, it's going to come up first now, though. They've built it up pretty well.
Yeah. It's an amazing you're going to be speaking there again this year?
I am. I'm excited that we're both speaking.
Yeah. Both of us are going to be there again. I'm going to be at the school. You're going to be where? I
have no idea. Somewhere. I should probably check that. I mean, I got a couple weeks.
That might be a good idea. But yeah, we're both going to be at PodFest. And there was somewhere I was going. But yeah, Chris Kremensos is a great guy, and it sounds like a great book, which, like I said, I should read. And you said, just go ahead and do it already. How often have you run into that as a business coach? That people that you were working with would continually say they're going to do something, they're about to, and never do it. Did you ever come up with a good way to get them to actually take that action? No,
and I'm all ears if somebody's got an idea. You know, I had one client in particular, and this person will remain nameless, but I ended up telling them that I couldn't coach them anymore because they just weren't taking action. Every time we talked, they said it was so helpful, it was so good, but I felt more like a counselor than a coach.
Okay.
You know, because what I was telling them to do, I'm like, hey, what you have is good. Like, it's not the best in the world, but you know, if you wait for it to look like Nike or like NFL standards or like any of these big brands, if you wait for it to look like Apple, like their branding and their logo and stuff like that, you are never going to press launch. I mean, if you look at some of these people, how they started, it looked terrible. Like these big brands that we all love. If you go back to the original design and even slogans and stuff, you're like, oh, what were they thinking? But they realized the key, which is just to get started. So some of these people I was coaching, one in particular, I finally had to say, I'm not taking your money anymore. I'm sorry. Like I can't help you unless you're willing to press send, as you're saying it. Like you've got to be willing to press that button. Yeah. Well, now I come from the carnival world, and I still occasionally help people sell used rides. And one of the more successful American amusement equipment builders, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he's from the Midwest. When he took his first ride to the first trade show to sell it to other carnival owners, they had to push it off the trailer. The ride did not actually work, but he managed to convince at least 2 or 3 people that when it went into production, it would run.
But I mean, if you look at his first experience at a trade show, like, how did he ever last 1 year, much less 40 years later? But sometimes that is just the way it is. It's there's people will be at least a little bit think a little bit differently if you actually showed up and took some sort of an action. Is all I can figure with him.
Yeah, here's the deal. I think that, using your terminology here, what's your excuse? I think a lot of people's excuse is they're afraid of the lashback that's going to come from it. They're afraid that it's going to disappoint somebody they know, or somebody's going to judge them for what they're producing, or someone's not going to like it. And man, that's all real. I mean, those are feelings that we all have to deal with. It's the cost of being successful and actually launching something. You're going to get criticized a lot. You're going to get a lot of pain from it. But this goes back to probably my main point that I have in life, Max. And this, like, community is key, and having those right people in your life to build you up when everyone else is tearing you down. I mean, there's more trolls on the internet than ever. When you have that right tribe, though, in your corner saying, you're doing good, keep on going, here's how I can help, let me help promote this for you, push this for you. And just having that type of person in your corner is so much more valuable than anything else you can do when you're launching, because it's going to get rid of the naysayers. So people are like, oh, someone else is already doing that, or that idea will never work, or I think this looks stupid, or you did the wrong colors on your website, or your product's, outdated, like whatever it is. We have those right people in your corner saying, no, let's help you. Let's continue moving forward. When you have that, man, that voice is so helpful. And honestly, to me, I've learned that just having people around for that voice is worth its weight in gold.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more about that as far as the positive voices. I'm going to preface this by saying I do not want a troller or a hater, but I've been very blessed not to have had any or very many of them. And usually when I do have somebody, usually somebody in my community will correct them before I have to. But there are going to be those people, because the most important thing you have to do if you're starting a business, or if you're starting a blog, or you're writing, whatever it is, the most important thing you have to do first is you're doing something that the people who know you best have never seen you do before, and will generally assume that you either can't do or that you will screw it up.
Yeah. You're dead on right there, man. I don't even have anything to add to that. You're exactly right.
Wow. All right, so I want to go back to something. I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway, because I think it might help some people who are aspiring to do a podcast. How do you get John Lee Dumas to come on your show?
I guess I shouldn't have mentioned that today, huh?
Well, you can pick another person as an example. I mean, I know the answer. The answer is you ask these people in a sincere, humble way, and show them how being on your show will add value to what they're trying to do. And also, it helps if you're reaching out to people who have a reputation of wanting to share their information and add value. But, so you can pick a different example if you want, but in general, how do you get people like John Lee Dumas to come on your podcast?
Yeah. So for me, it all comes down to, okay, all these people, they get pitches all the time. People are always like, hey, I should be on your podcast, or you should be on mine, with no explanation.
I do that all the time. Yeah.
But no, you give an explanation. Some people are just like, I should be on your podcast. I actually had somebody recently tell me that. She reached out to me on LinkedIn. Nameless person, like everyone I'm talking about today. And she's like, hey, I'd like to be on your podcast. And, usually I don't even respond, but I was like, whatever, I'll say something. So I was like, okay. I'm like, what do you want to talk about? I'm not sure. What do you think? I didn't even respond to that. I didn't respond. I'm like, what? No, you're not gonna be on my podcast. Like, everyone who's on there is like a focused person. So here's the deal. I'm still at the phase, I believe all podcasts hit a point where you're no longer the one looking for guests. I've had to hustle for the majority of mine, not all of them, but most of them I had to hustle for. So perfect example, I'll go with John Lee Dumas, because that one has an interesting story. So I was at a conference. You know what? It was Podfest last year. He was one of the speakers. Am I right?
Yeah, he was one of the keynote speakers.
Yeah,
he was also the subject of the roast.
Yeah, right. I didn't go to that.
An event that I'm still not sure I was old enough to attend, but yes, he was there.
I didn't go to it. Don't worry. I knew I wasn't old enough, so I did not go. Okay, so yeah, it was Podfest.
My sighted guide was going, so I went.
Okay, nice. So anyway, when I was there, I was at a they did like this huge networking thing where there's 1,000 people in the room, and everyone kind of gets.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
they put 8 people at the table, and then they kept rotating around to try to have as many of us meet as many as possible, and then we all had to answer short open-ended questions to share with each person at the table. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was actually super powerful. It was fantastic. I loved it. Anyway, I got assigned a table leader. When you're randomly walking in, you just get a card, and I just happened to land the table leader card. So I sit down. I'm like, okay, this is my tables. The first group. We got 5 minutes before we start. So I start talking to them, and behind me, somebody screams. I'm going to back up from the mic a little bit. He just goes, "Table 23." And I was like, in my mind, I come from a background in church. And when I heard someone scream table 23, I was like, I got a crazy. Like, there's going to be a crazy at my table. I can't believe that I was the one that got landed, this person. I turn around. I'm like, whoa, it's John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire. I was like, JLD, what's up, man? He's like, hey, buddy. And, sat down right next to me. We talked for a few minutes. Anyway, him being John Lee Dumas looked at his card. He's like, oh, I'm not the table leader. I was like, no, man, I got that. I was like, I got that table leader status. He's like, oh, man. He's like, I want that. I'm like, well, you're not getting it from me. You better go somewhere else. And then he just laughed, and we started talking about it. Anyway, about 5 minutes go by. We're about to start. I'm like, you know what, man? I'm like, here, you're the table leader. And he's like, are you serious, man? I was like, yep. He's like, oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm like, you're going to owe me one at some point. You realize that, right? And he just laughed. He's like, all right, whatever you say, man. So we ended up connecting a few more times over the conference, actually, hanging out for a little bit and things like that. And I just told him, like, hey, man, like, I'd love for you to be on my podcast. If you believe you can add value, let me go ahead. And because at this point I hadn't launched yet, I'm like, let me get this thing launched and get it to where it needs to go. And then I'll reach out to you. So he gave me his email address, gave me his direct contact. And months later, I reached out to him, and we, here we are nearly a year later, but it was the right time. And I was like, hey man, let's get you on. And then he came on. So for me, it was about building that relationship, but also showing where the value add was going to be. So I was able to say, I didn't just say, hey, I want you on my podcast because you're going to help it grow. No, I said, hey, wait until I have the audience that's going to value from what you say. And when I reached out to him to say I was ready for him to be on the podcast, I had a very specific thing I wanted him to talk about. I'm like, here is what I want my audience to hear from you. And because of that, he was more than willing to jump on with me.
Well, can I guess that the one thing you wanted to talk about was knowing your avatar or knowing your Jimmy?
No, actually, it wasn't. We talked about basically 3 tips for people to become successful in their entrepreneurial journey. So I had 3 things that I picked out that I've heard him talk about. That I said, I want you to talk about these 3 things. I think he was very grateful because most people just jump on, and he can do it. He's been on thousands of podcasts. If you just say, hey, go for it, he'll go and it'll make sense. But the fact that I was so like, hey, this is going to be the title. These are the things I want you to mention because I know it's going to add the most value. He was really appreciative of that.
Yeah. So in the beginning, you can ask a lot of people, but when it comes to asking people like John Lee Dumas, then you really have to think about how are you going to add value to their life as a result of them being on your podcast. And then the other thing is, you didn't ask him to marry you the first time you met him. Y'all had some fun, made a joke, shared some laughs, hung out at a table where there was going to be networking going on anyway, which is great because then you don't have the whole awkward thing about, do I talk to John Lee Dumas or not? And that's something I'm going to have to address with my sighted guide this year is, look, I don't care if you're starstruck, I'm not. So wherever the famous people is, we wants to meet them,
Right. Something else you can do, because not everyone has the opportunity like you and me. We're both speakers, so we get the opportunity to meet all these people or share a speaker lounge with them and things like that. But if you don't have that and you're saying, I still want to land certain guests, particular people, you got to do something different than everyone else is doing. Because you got to think about it. All these people, they're getting a lot of people sending them emails saying, hey, I want you on my podcast. And being specific is helpful. Having an idea is helpful. What I found is nothing beats a video pitch or
Really?
audio, either one. If you actually send them a video of you saying, hey, I'm a huge fan, and here's a few things I like that you do, being very specific so they understand, hey, this person actually knows who I am. And then at the end of it saying, I'd love for you to be a guest on my podcast, and leaving a little pause in there. I recently did that for, actually, it's my favorite YouTube star who's going to be a guest on the podcast. He actually reached out to me directly, but I left him a video pitch in the first it's 3 minutes total. So sorry, the first 2 minutes of it was me giving him basically a testimonial that he could use. I paused for a second. I said, in addition, I'd love for you to be a guest on my podcast. If not, use this as a testimonial. You don't need to do anything else, but I'd love to have you. I said more words than that, but basically if he was to cut out the last minute of it, he has a great testimonial for his website or for anything else that he wants to use. So I added value by doing that, but also added the pitch to the end of it. And that's what actually landed me that guest who has, nearly 10 million followers on YouTube. And, I can't imagine how many emails and messages he gets, but what made me stand out is I was willing to make a video for him, 3 minutes of my time, and really add that value and stand out among the crowd that was asking him the same question that I was.
Okay. Now I warned you about this. So you've just given me another idea. We were kind of joking about before we went to record that that I continue to sing The River as part of my show, that I really appreciate the song and Garth in general, and that someday he's probably going to sue me and send me a cease and desist letter. But still, I've been trying to get his attention because I would love to get his response to the way I perform his song. I'd also love to get him on the podcast. So while he's been ignoring the videos I recorded for everybody, now you have me thinking I need to record a video just for Garth.
I
So
think that is
I
a
appreciate that
fantastic
idea. I'll
idea.
let you know how it works out.
Please do.
You know, I'm just checking my new Braille watch to make sure that I'm not abusing your time.
Thank you.
So that's how you got John Lee Dumas, and that's how you were also going to get this YouTube performer that's going to be on your podcast.
Yeah, actually a handful of my guests I've done that. Probably half
Handful
my
of your
guests.
you've done it.
Yeah.
All right, that's a very good idea. It's one of those things I had not heard of or thought of before, and it's probably something more and more people are going to be using. I have left audio messages for people through LinkedIn, but I hadn't thought about using that as a way to pitch hosts, because it, for some reason, just didn't feel right to pitch a host through LinkedIn. But that's something I have to think about: video and audio pitches for people that maybe they're a little bit above the usual guests that you get or want to get. So, one last thing, you mentioned how well your podcast did, and a lot of that was because of the preparation. What are some of the things you do to promote your podcast, and how well is that going?
Yeah, I'm new to the promotional side of things. I really rely heavily on my guests to help out with that, as a lot of them have a little bit more influence than I do to go out there and push the podcast with me. However, when I first launched, I reached out to everyone I know, and I sent them a link. I said, hey, I just launched a podcast. I would love for you to do two things. One, listen to it, and two, share it with somebody you think would find it valuable. And that's how I launched it. It was really organic like that. More recently, I've done my best to start doing a little bit of organic promoting through social media, so really stepped up the game there and things like that. But as far as paid promotion, I'm all about testing things. So I'm doing currently doing a demo with that right now to kind of test the waters on that. And so far it's okay. But at the end of the day, man, for me, it's about adding that value. And if the right tribe is there, great. I believe it'll grow organically. People will share it if it's helping them out. And that's what I'm believing for right there. And it's always great to say it at the end of the episode. I always say, thanks for subscribing, thanks for sharing, and for leaving 5-star ratings and reviews. And that type of thing helps a little bit as well. But for me, it's been mostly organic, which is the way that I tend to do it. You might ask me in 6 months from now when I hit a year, and I might have something different to tell you. But at the 6-month mark, this is where I'm at. I'm focused on organic and just do my best there. And for me, my time is, as is mostly spent in the community. That's where I spend the vast majority of my time. Not trying to just get the podcast to have bigger reach and more people. It's more about helping the tribe that I currently have that I've been blessed with today.
Yeah, I think it's good that while you're generally working to help us, you give us an opportunity to help you a little bit with the podcast. And where do you stand as far as subscribers? I mean, you've talked about how being in a numbers society sometimes causes us problems. Do you feel like you always have to send out those emails and ask people to listen and share, or do you think there comes a point where you have enough subscribers or enough followers on your blog or members of the community where you won't have to do that?
Yeah, I hope to reach that point at some level where it's no longer needing that, because at some point fandom takes place, right? And that's what I'm all believing for. You add as much value as you can. At some point, it becomes so valuable that people can't help but share it. So a perfect example of that, recently I had a friend of my wife. She came over and she was talking about how we had to get an Instapot, like just had to get one. She gave us 100 reasons why, and like why we had to have it. Here was the brand that she got. Here's everything about it. Like you got to go get this one. This is what you need.
What the heck is it?
It's like I'm not the kitchen guy. I should get my wife. It's like a fast. I'm going to get this way wrong. Somebody who's listening is going to correct us both. But from what I understand is like a fast, what's the slow one called? The one that cooks things slowly? Man, you really caught me off guard with this question, Max. This is way in my wheelhouse.
All right. Okay. So it's a kitchen gadget. Neither one of us know what it is, but she was telling you absolutely have to have one.
Yes, you have to have one. It cooks food faster than anything else. Anyway, here's the deal. She is not a paid endorser. She gets no benefit from sharing that at all. She was sharing it because her experience with getting that product was so good. She got it. She said it came in the mail, came quality packed. It was super nice. It was easy to use. The second she plugged it in, it looks great on her kitchen counter. all this. She was just raving about it. And that's the thing. If you can create fandom around what you're doing, then you don't have to market or sell anymore, because the people that love it will do it for you. And on top of that, if I'm a Facebook ad, let's just put like an advertisement right now, and I was talking about this Instapot thing, my wife would have just scrolled right past it. But one of her friends as influencer life said, "You need one?" Guess what? My wife is now like, "I need one of those." That's more powerful than any marketing or sales you will ever be able to do. And that's when you create something so powerful that people can't ignore it and they want to be part of it. So that is the hope for my podcast in the future, that people say it is so good that you can't afford to miss it, and they go tell all their friends about it.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed getting to sit down and talk with you again. I look forward to seeing you again at Podfest in a few weeks here. Is there one thing you would like to leave people with here at the end that they can take with them as they go out into their week, and hopefully start to take some action, maybe start to press those send buttons?
Yeah, for sure. Talking about pushing that send button finally, I'll use a quote that I love, and it's that the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The second best time is today. The best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The second best time is today. Here's the deal. If I could have started my podcast and all this 10 years ago when podcasting was first really coming on the scene, I'd be huge by now. Absolutely huge by now. If you would have pressed publish 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it would have helped a lot. But here's the deal. Let's not look back. Today is a new day. Today is the second best time to start something. Obviously, 25 years ago would have been ideal, but today is the second best time. Don't look back. Press send today. Get started with where you're at. And man, that's the way to do it. That's how you're going to really propel your life forward, is just saying, you know what, I maybe should have done this a while ago, or maybe I should have, not taken so long playing. I should have just gone for it. If you can do it today, it's really going to help you a lot in the future, because that's how you build the futures, based off what you're doing today.
Well, I really appreciate that. And also very thankful that you've had the time to come on and share some of your wisdom with my listeners and viewers.
Absolutely, Max. Like I said, this is a highlight of my week, man. I was so excited to be on your podcast today, man. I love this.
Yeah, I got to put that out somewhere. After talking with John Lee Dumas, Alex Sanfilippo says, speaking to Max Ivey was the highlight of his week. Okay, I'm going to write that down.
Well, he's going to email me cussing me out after that. So I'm just kidding.
I just don't think we connect in the same circles, although who knows, it might be a way that we do connect if I can find him on LinkedIn or Twitter or something.
For sure.
Yeah,
But Max,
I wouldn't do that to you. I appreciate my guests too much to do that. Now I would let one of my friends do it for me, but I wouldn't do that to you personally.
Thanks. Hey, if you want to, go for it. I think it'd be awesome.
All right. You think we'd have fun with him, huh?
For sure. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I sure do appreciate it. And I really appreciate your friendship and the community. And I can't wait to see where this leads for you in the future.
Thanks again, Max. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, so we had another great conversation this time with Alex Sanfilippo from creatingabrand.com. And I would say if there's one thing we learned from him that really runs through everything he said, it was add value. Help the other person solve their problems, answer their questions, give them ideas and suggestions, help them promote the work that they're doing, add value. Think of what you can do for the other person or the other company. That's the best way to meet, to make connections, to lead to opportunities. And it's also the best way to grow a brand. And that's what he was sharing with me today. And I personally believe it's a great way to do it. I got started as far as promoting my blog originally, doing commenting on other people's blogs and then sharing their posts on social media. So a lot of people really stress over getting quality comments or getting comments at all. And then of course, people like to see that their work is being shared on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. So that was my first experience with providing value to other people. I like to try to do that as best I can when I go on somebody else's podcast or when I invite them on my show. And just look at some of the things that have happened for Alex as a result of adding value. And his community is really a great, friendly, safe, supportive community. It does cost a small fee per month to join, but I have made some very good connections in there and received quite a bit of advice and information since I've been a member. And his podcast is a really cool podcast, Creating a Brand. And it isn't while it may be mostly business people, entrepreneurs, and business experts, they share a lot of life learning, the type of advice that can be applied to any aspect of your life as long as you have your mind and heart open to listening. So I definitely encourage you to visit creatingabrand.com. As for me, I am still helping people get booked on podcasts and radio shows, also connecting them with the publishers of online magazines, creators of virtual summits, and even reaching out for some people to agents and publishers for their book. So I do a lot as far as connecting people with opportunities to grow their passion. I love working with creative entrepreneurs, especially authors, musicians, filmmakers, when they're in those early stages, still finding their way, still trying to get attention for their work, even still trying to figure out what their voice is to a certain extent. And if you want to hire me, you can go to theblindblogger.net and click on the clients page or the online publicity page, and you can see what I charge, how I do it, and what you can expect in return if you hire me. And I'm also available for public speaking. I'm looking to share my hilarious life experiences and the lessons people can take from those. And as far as hiring me, we can either discuss an actual fee, or you can do like some others have done, and you can provide my living and traveling expenses, such as plane or train fare, place to stay, food, transportation around your city, those sorts of, basic minimum needs. And if you are interested, like I say, just go to theblindblogger.net or use my email, just ask@theblindblogger.net. Please do check out my sponsors, createmyvoice.com and needleshop.com. And if you want to consider sponsoring the podcast, we can talk about that too. So until next time, I really do appreciate your continued support. I look forward to hearing how I may be able to help you in the future. And please do share, rate, review. So until next time, thank you and take care out there. I am the blind blogger, Max Ivey. Too many times we stand aside and let the water slip away, till what we put off to tomorrow has finally come today. So don't stand upon the shoreline and say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids and dare to dance the tide.